Well, I finally did it. I finally started One Piece. After a lot of convincing, I sat down and pressed start on one of the longest and probably most overhyped anime of all time, and I gotta say, I'm impressed. As a newcomer to One Piece, and with this being such a big deal, I wanted to take time to review every saga, so today, I'll be starting that series at the very beginning with East Blue. Before that though, I want to briefly talk about why it took me so long to actually start the series and the one point that finally convinced me. I've spent a long time in the anime sphere, so of course One Piece comes up all the time, but one of my biggest issues was how long the series is. I mean, 1,000+ episodes is a pretty big commitment. From an outside perspective, an episode count that high is very daunting, and rightfully so. Why watch 1,000 episodes of one show when you could watch a multitude of different shows and still come up super short of that number? At least that's how I looked at it. Once I started though, things didn't seem so bad. I've been enjoying the episodes and I'm constantly getting sucked into staying up way too late to binge them. It also helps that I'm watching the series dubbed. Yeah, get your booze out of the way now. Personally, I think the dub sounds fine, and it helps me get through the series quicker since I can just turn it on while I'm working, eating, or just chilling before bed. Another thing that helps is this video series. I want to do a video encapsulating my thoughts on each saga before continuing on, so now I've gotten a decent break and won't feel burned out when I go to start Alabasta. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that the biggest turnoff for me starting was the fanbase. I get it, y'all love this show, but a majority of the One Piece fans I've interacted with might legitimately be insane. They tear down other shows I actually like My Hero and Demon Slayer, solely for the sake of blindly gassing up One Piece, and I just didn't appreciate that. As you can see though, I eventually put that to the side and started anyway, but only after I was hit with the single greatest reason to watch One Piece now. We are currently in the pre-One Piece era. I can't just jump on Google and ask, what is the One Piece? Because we don't know. So with the manga coming to a close relatively soon, it's time for me to catch up before that happens. So speaking of, let's jump into East Blue. I didn't really know what to expect going into this. I mean, how does a series as iconic as One Piece start? Oh, that's Luffy in a barrel. I think the first few episodes of One Piece are really good. It does a stellar job of not wasting any time and getting straight into things. One thing I was worried about was how long it would take to get to characters like Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji, since those are the ones that I know as a newcomer, and then we get to all of them in the East Blue saga. I will say I got uncharacteristically excited to hear the first opening for the first time since it's so iconic, only to be disappointed by it being in English. I know that stays a thing for a while, but it's still kind of disappointing because I was never really one for English covers of anime songs anyway. Instead of just throwing out random talking points for however long this video is, I'm gonna break down the rest of it into 3 sections: the characters, the pacing, and how I feel so far. Now, if your series is gonna be over 1,000 episodes long, then you need to have some really good characters or things will get stale. One Piece, however, doesn't have this issue, at least as far as I've watched. The Straw Hats are already becoming some of my favorite anime characters because they're all so fun and unique. Luffy is absolutely an airhead 99% of the time, and he just kinda does whatever he wants, but much like many shonen protagonists before and after him, he can really lock in when it comes down to it. Despite his airheadedness, he's still a great captain to the Straw Hats, and I can understand exactly why the others follow him. He's got an infectious charisma that makes anyone feel like they can also do whatever they set their mind to. Whether it's being the best swordsman, finding the All Blue, or becoming king of the pirates, Luffy's attitude and drive inspires and motivates those around him, and I really like that. You can also see from the start how his character needs to grow and improve. He acknowledges that he can't do everything on his own, but doesn't understand that he can't just gum punch his way through every single problem that pops up. I also personally really liked Luffy's backstory with Shanks, even though it was in episode 4 and not episode 1, but I also understand why they did that because it probably would have been really confusing. Moving on from Luffy, we can talk about my current favorite character, Roronoa Zobda. I didn't even say his name right. Fake fan! Moving on from Luffy, we can talk about my current favorite character, Zoro. Listen, I've always been a sword guy. I think they're super cool, and anytime I can use one in a video game, I do. So you can imagine how much I like Zoro, given that he has 3. Something this series does well is subvert your expectations when meeting a new character. We're told that Zoro is this big bad pirate hunter, but in reality he's just a normal person who's really good with swords. Zoro quickly became my favorite because, much like Luffy, he can be kinda dumb sometimes and isn't the best with directions, but when he absolutely needs to, he can lock in and put up a good fight. In a similar vein, my second favorite is Sanji. Why? Because he's really funny. He bounces off the rest of the crew incredibly well, and I'll never get tired of him being uber serious and telling the guys no, only for him to completely simp and fawn over Nami. Speaking of, Nami is probably, objectively, the best character in East Blue. Now, granted that's because she is the focus of Arlong Park, but everything about her story is so well written. Oda takes you on this journey of getting mad that she's stealing from the Straw Hats, to then feeling bad because you understand why she's doing it and wanting to help her get out of it and become her own person. And last but not least, we have Usopp. When I first met him, I was kinda shocked to hear that people didn't like him. Like, yes, he's quite the liar and can be cowardly, but much like Zoro, he's a really nice guy with a very genuine heart. All of the Straw Hats come together to make a really solid crew with some genuinely great chemistry that never ceases to make me laugh, get emotional, or yell at the TV from being so hyped. I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention the villains, but I'll speed run those real quick. Alvida and Axe and Morgan were alright, Buggy was pretty cool, Kuro was interesting, Don Krieg was sick, Arlong is my favorite villain so far, and Smoker's pretty cool too. Okay, I think that's everyone. Now time to move on what'll probably be the most negative part of the video, the pacing. One of the big reasons people say they don't want to watch One Piece is because of how bad the pacing is, and honestly, that's so valid. I don't think East Blue has super bad pacing, at least not to start out with, but as time goes on it gets progressively worse, and you can especially feel it around big fights. Something I did to help with that issue was skip the recap and intro for every episode, which can save you up to 4 minutes per episode. Now, I understand why they did that, since way back in the day they needed to pad the runtime to avoid catching up with the manga. You know, the same reason why there's an 8-episode filler arc at the end of East Blue. Which, quick side tangent, I didn't mind the filler arc this time around since it was something original and fun to watch in the background while I was working. As I was saying, the pacing is fine until you get to a big fight like Kuro, and it takes 6 episodes when it definitely could have been done in 3. And most of that time is spent waiting for Luffy to come back, but it's also emblematic of most older anime like One Piece and Dragon Ball, where there's constantly memes about how long it takes Goku to come back from the dead or get to the fight, and One Piece is no different in that sense. I think the worst pacing of East Blue is during Arlong Park, which, ironically enough, is my favorite arc so far. While I did enjoy that arc as a whole, it just felt like that final fight kept dragging on and on and on for eternity, and then once Luffy showed up, boom, we're done and moved on to the next thing. There's not much I can do about the pacing since it's an older series, and no, I'm not gonna watch One Piece because there's no easy way to watch it on my phone like I can with Crunchyroll. I'd rather suffer through the bad pacing than resort to piracy, ironically enough. I seriously considered waiting for the Studio Wit remake of One Piece since it seems like they're gonna fix most of those pacing issues now that the manga is way ahead, but that's still a ways out and I wanted to start now. With all that being said, you may be asking, how am I feeling about One Piece now? Well, let me tell you. I've said for months, especially on this channel, that I think One Piece is incredibly overhyped, but I always added the caveat that I hadn't seen it, so I couldn't really say much. Now that I've actually watched it, I can safely say that yes, it is still very much overhyped. Let me be clear though, I don't think that means it's bad. It seems to me that the anime community associates shows being overhyped with being bad when those are two totally different metrics. There are plenty of other shows I think are overhyped, like Attack on Titan. It's a phenomenal series, but the fanbase does tend to hype it up a bit too much, and One Piece is the same way. The fanbase creates these larger-than-life expectations for you going into it, which can then lead to you being disappointed in what you actually watched. I genuinely never thought I would end up liking One Piece as much as I do. When I first started watching, I said that I would reevaluate how I felt after every saga and see if I wanted to keep going, but as of right now, I don't think I'm gonna stop. I want to catch up on the series and see all of these hype moments that people keep talking about and try to figure out why people overhype this series so much. So far, East Blue delivered a very satisfying experience, and needless to say, I'm hooked. I expected One Piece to be this filler-ridden mid-tier shonen, but what I ended up watching was this pretty well-crafted series that will definitely grow on me as I watch more. So yeah, the cat is out of the bag. I'm gonna keep watching One Piece, and by the time I record this video, I'll probably be halfway through or finished with Alabasta since I've been itching to watch more for a while. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I want to do a review of each saga as I work my way through the series so I can look back once I've caught up and see how my thoughts on the series changed and evolved. I would love to get your feedback in the comments on how I can improve these videos though. Where should I flesh out my thoughts? What should I talk about? Etc. And also, no spoilers in the comments. I know I shouldn't have to say it, but you never truly can trust YouTube comments these days. I also want to take a second to give a special shout out to John Bass, Trevor, Maximum Effort Max, Sean Tige, Spectral TV, Amor12321, Zeke Shine, TC Indiana, Wiki Silence, and everyone else who's become a member and helped support me this month, since it all goes back into making videos like this. For now, I'll sign off here, but while you wait for the next One Piece video, you can check out one of the two videos on screen, one being about why you'll never be a real anime fan, and the other being what YouTube thinks you should watch. Roronoa Zora. Roronoa Zoa. Roronoa Zoro. Roanoa Zoro.